Democrats were happy that they got their fighting spirit back because they're no longer plain dead after losing the elections last year. And they feel like they have the wind at their back because of what happened last week in the elections in Virginia, New Jersey, New York, California, and Georgia, even. And so they feel in a good position for the midterm elections. But if they had kept the government closed for many months, then moderate voters who had previously blamed Republicans for the shutdown because Republicans are the ones in charge, they might have turned on Democrats and say, hey, you're being unreasonable.
The longest US government shutdown in history looks like it's about to come to an end. A funding deal has passed the Senate with the help of Democrat votes. Daniel Lippman is the White House and Washington reporter for Politico and joins us now. Daniel, can you just remind us, what does it mean for the government to be in shutdown? Why did this happen?
Well, it means that air traffic controllers, most federal government employees, except for congressmen, actually, were not getting paid. So hundreds of thousands of them who were not essential were furloughed, so they couldn't work. And so it made it impossible to go to the museums, to get lots of businesses to do normal operations if they need government support with permits and the like. And so this has all been caused because Republicans did not want to extend health insurance subsidies as part of Obamacare.
And that's something, of course, that caused a big political row and therefore then this shutdown. How has that been resolved, and has it been?
So 8 Democratic senators who are more moderate and are not facing the voters next year in the midterm elections, they agreed on Sunday night to reopen the government in exchange for a promised vote on Obamacare subsidies next month. And so they've gotten a lot of heat from their liberal Democratic bases because they're saying you gave in to Trump. We didn't even get the policy victories that we wanted. But Democrats were starting to get some of the blame for keeping the government closed. And this was affecting 40 million Americans who rely on food stamps because they were not getting full payments for food assistance. And so there was a lot of collateral damage. We saw the air travel system start to get more chaotic because air traffic controllers were having to work extra jobs as Uber drivers and the like to put food on the table. And you did not want to have a situation where you have a tired air traffic controller directing hundreds of people in planes to make sure they don't crash into each other.
Yeah, or I heard that many of them were sort of calling in sick because they're not getting paid, and therefore you've got loads of those flight delays, flight cancellations. Daniel, it's quite a weird concept for us to kind of understand what happens because, of course, this does not happen in the UK. It sounds in the end that for those Democrats, it became to a toss-up between do we want the consequence of these sort of it's 1.4 million federal employees not getting paid versus the concessions they've got to make on healthcare. And in the end, the pain of keeping the government shut down was becoming too unpalatable.
Yeah, and Democrats were happy that they got their fighting spirit back because they're no longer plain dead after losing the elections last year. And they feel like they have the wind at their back because of what happened last week in the elections in Virginia, New Jersey, New York, California, and Georgia even. And so they feel in a good position for the midterm elections. But if they had kept the government closed for many months, then moderate voters who had previously blamed Republicans for the shutdown because Republicans are the ones in charge, they might have turned on Democrats and say, hey, you're being unreasonable, that the pain of the shutdown is more than the subsidies would have hurt people. And so a lot of those some of those subsidies are going to people who are pretty well off financially. And so there's some kind of edge, things on the edges that Democrats might not be able to defend. But they might still be able to reach a deal to extend the subsidies because this deal to reopen the government is only until January 30th. And so part of it could shut down again
Yeah.
they are not able to clinch a deal.
Yeah, you can imagine. So the negotiation's very much a live issue. While we have you, Daniel, we've been talking sort of at length over the last 2 or 3 days here in the UK about this battle that the BBC have currently with the US President Donald Trump over this misleadingly edited clip that was on one of our Panorama programmes here. What has been the reaction so far for your colleagues in Washington and also the American public?
Well, I think the American public was kind of shocked a little bit that the BBC would make a mistake in terms of splicing his clips together, where they could have easily just used a technique in TV to make clear it was not at the same moment he was talking about, fight like hell and go to the Capitol. And so this hurts the reputation of the BBC. But this is also another example of Trump going after the media. And he's sued ABC, CBS, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, lots of media organizations. And he was very happy to get a scalp with the director general and the head of news resigning over the weekend. But I don't think that this hurts the BBC long term in their American audience, because their American audience is pretty anti-Trump anyways, and so but it may kind of elevates the BBC into just another news organization that Trump has gone after to try to undermine the credibility of mainstream fact-based reporting as opposed to conservative outlets that are less fair.
Just very quickly, Daniel, from your experience of your colleagues and other reporters from other news agencies, when the President of the United States comes after your news organisation, how much more difficult is it then for that reporter who's got to be at the White House and potentially ask questions of him as well?
It becomes more difficult. And so I don't know if BBC is going to get an interview anytime with a lot of Trump officials because they don't want to get the blowback if they had done an interview and then the White House says, "Oh, you did an interview with the BBC? How dare you?" And so it does become more difficult. But for a lot of reporters, you're not going to get the best stories by just going to the White House. And so I try to stay away and cultivate confidential sources far away from the White House.
Thank you for giving us a little bit of the inside track. Daniel Lippman, the White House and Washington reporter for Politico.
It looks like we're getting very close to the shutdown. We'll never agree to give any substantial money or any money to really prisoners, illegals that come into our country. And I think the Democrats understand that. And it looks like we're getting close to the shutdown ending. You'll know very soon. Thank you very much.